that is Cruel Summer, and if that's your favorite song, it's going to be a little pain because we're going to stop it right there. It is Monday evening, and we're about to start our second episode of... There's not any for that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just making sure.
We're about to start our second episode of Comics, Philosophy, and Religion. We've got Dr. Robert Orr tonight, and he has a very deep philosophical conversation planned for us. And it's myself, Trip Morgan, and Dr. Campbell also here. So we'll stop intermittently and play a few songs, but otherwise we're going to leave it to Dr. Orr. And so take it away, Dr. Orr.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Trip Morgan, for inviting me to give this talk, and thank you very much, Dr. Campbell, for being present too. I'm going to talk about how quantum computing, AI, and blockchain will revolutionize life in the 21st century. So, what I want to start with is perhaps to define what a quantum computer is. I know that many of you are probably wondering, what is a quantum computer? So a quantum computer is built using quantum components instead of electronic components. So the logic is based on qubits rather than bits. As you know, electronic computers use on and off, which is a bit. So a bit is on or off, a 0 or 1. But a qubit can take on any value ranging from 0 to 1. So it is almost like saying it can be on and off at the same time, or somewhere in between. So why quantum computers? Well, quantum computers operate in the range of the speed of light. So they travel... the photons travel at about 300 million miles per second, while an electronic computer operates at about 225,000 meters per second.
Why so slow?
Well, electrons are not really that slow, because 225,000 meters per second is pretty high.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
It's faster than I can run.
Exactly. 225 kilometers per second, you know. But light is so much faster. It is at 300 million miles per second. So when we design circuits, quantum circuits, photonic circuits, the light photons are traveling at extremely fast speeds. Just imagine 300 million miles per second. So they can travel around the world in nanoseconds. And quantum computers also use the laws of quantum physics, while electronic computers use Boolean logic. So quantum logic is very, very different from Boolean logic, as we shall see. There are about 6 ways in which quantum computers differ from electronic computers. The first is that quantum computers use the uncertainty principle, which derives from the laws of quantum mechanics, the uncertainty principle. And what the uncertainty principle means is that if you have 2 photons, and each of those photons will be moving at the speed of light, and they will also be moving with an angular momentum. Now, if you try to observe those photons, if you know the position of the photon, you cannot know the angular momentum with certainty. Conversely, if you know the angular momentum, you cannot know the position with certainty. So that is the uncertainty principle. It is based on Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Now, there is also the idea of quantum superposition. So what quantum superposition means is that a photon can exist for instance, an electron is either on or off. So that's why, if it is on, then electrons flow. If it is off, electrons don't move. But the quantum superposition is different. It can have values between on and off, and even values in between. It can have values between 0 and 1 and values in between. So it can take on a value like 0.8 or 0.6 or 0.3. So we refer to this as quantum superposition. Now, another principle that we look at is quantum entanglement. So where you have two photons, and these two photons affect each other, and it results in a third state. So photon 1 has one state, photon 2 has another state, and then the two interact and result in a third state, which is called the quantum entanglement. Now also there is the concept of quantum tunneling. So if you have an object, a heavy object, and you push it across a hill, according to the laws of classical physics, you need a certain force to push it, and force equals mass times acceleration. So you need a certain force to push it up the hill. Now in quantum mechanics, this is absolutely strange in that a photon can move from one state to another state seemingly without any force acting on it, and we refer to this as quantum tunneling. And then finally there is what is called quantum teleportation. So quantum teleportation is when you have a photon acquiring the properties of another photon instantaneously. And you could have a photon on the moon and then a photon on Earth, and then you spin the photon on the Earth, and automatically the photon on the moon spins as well. It acquires the properties of the photon on Earth, and this is referred to as quantum teleportation. Now it is interesting, of course, when you look at science fiction such as Star Wars, you talk about beaming a person. A person says, beam me over, and they are transported from one place to another location using teleportation. This is the same idea of the instantaneous properties, acquisition of properties. Okay. So of course quantum computers also operate in a parallel manner. So electronic computers execute instructions, in a sequence. So it is one instruction after another. But quantum computers are inherently parallel. So that means that they can execute billions of instructions simultaneously, and this makes them extremely powerful. As a result of this, we are going to see that quantum computers are going to do a lot of things which are very, very amazing. And we shall see that modeled with artificial intelligence and blockchain, they can become extremely powerful and solve so many problems. Now, what is the state of quantum computing today? Quantum computers have actually been built. I think IBM has built a quantum computer called IBM Q, and you can program that computer using Qiskit programming. Qiskit is a programming language that automatically programs a quantum computer. We also have Google has built a quantum computer as well, and actually Google's quantum computer was able to beat called AlphaGo, was able to beat a Chinese in a game, and this was quite amazing. And since then Google has claimed to have the fastest quantum computer, but this is yet to be verified. Another company that makes quantum computers is D-Wave. It's a Canadian company, and they also make very powerful computers.
So Dr. Ward, do they not work on the binary system?
No, they don't work on the binary system. They work on a whole range of values from 0 to 1. So they can take on any value from 0 to 1, 0.1, 0.2, 0.5, all the way up to 1.
Does that give more options for?
It gives infinitely many options. As you know, between 0 and 1, there are infinitely many real numbers, 0.1, 0.15, 0.2, 0.25. So there are just so many options, yes.
So how do they build logic gates around that if they're not using Boolean logic?
So the way they build logic gates is that it is a computation. It will take on a final value of 0.5 or 0.75. So it has a probability function associated with it, the value it will take. Let's say that you're saying, are you going to say yes or are you going to say no? And the decision may be somewhere in between. Mostly a yes, but most likely a little bit of no. Yes, yes.
Right.
So that's how it operates.
Yeah, it seems kind of spooky. Didn't Einstein call this spooky?
Yes, Einstein called it spooky. Yes,
Yeah.
And Einstein said God does not play dice when he was when he disagreed with Niels Bohr. Niels Bohr was a great quantum scientist, and ultimately Einstein had to accept the fact that yes, quantum science is true.
Yeah.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes. So the Australians have also done tremendous work in quantum computing, especially in error correction, and the Japanese as well. The Japanese, as a matter of fact, have connected a quantum computer to the human brain, and they are able to detect some thought processes. For instance, when somebody is getting angry, the computer will say he's getting angry, or he's getting excited. So they are beginning to learn certain signals, certain neurotransmissions which are taking place. As you know, from neuroscience.
Can I stop you there?
Yes, please.
What does that mean to connect to the brain? Is it just connection in the sense that they can read the emotions, or can it control the thought?
Okay, maybe let me explain the fundamental science first.
Sure.
So in the brain, you have several neurons, and these neurons are connected together using synapses, and certain electrochemical signals called neurotransmitters travel between one neuron and another, and one neuron can receive thousands of neurotransmissions, and then they can interpret it. So one or more neurotransmissions can mean a specific signal. So what the Japanese have done is to connect electrical nodes to these synapses. And so when neurotransmission is taking place, they can detect it. And then they try to say, what is the meaning of this signal? So when somebody gets angry, there are certain neurotransmissions that take place. And so they now know that when somebody is happy, when somebody is worried. So they are beginning to interpret these neural signals.
So the connection is not prescriptive, it's descriptive.
Exactly, yes.
Now, do we think that, I hope I'm not jumping the gun on the questioning, but do we think that we will get to a point where we can move beyond mere interpretation to actual determination?
Actual determination, yes. And within 10 years. And a lot of work is being done by Elon Musk. Elon Musk is doing a lot of work, and he believes that within 10 years we will be able to connect the entire internet to the brain and be able to communicate back and forth. So,
in the sense that you could literally download all the content of the internet onto the human brain.
Onto the human brain, yes. And
so
probably not. And so I think
I'm a teacher, and so what you're saying is that I need to start looking for another job.
No, probably
not
probably
really.
not, because I don't think that's the way. I don't think neuroscience thinks that's the way it works. The way I understand the description of it, you go back about, I think, 8 to 10 million years. Okay.
Sure.
And we had a biological advance where we got in a larger cerebrum. And so then we started to, that larger cerebrum allowed our evolution into the next critter. I mean, because there's critters that are like us 99%, but there's something about us that's a little bit different. And so I think, so the way you can think about this is that you're going to be able to increase the capacity of your cerebrum even further. So the computational component to that would be different. Whether that means that you can instantaneously see or have access to more and more data. Sort of like, and it's analogous to the way we look at our smartphones today. So instead of storage of information, I'm already beginning to lose my ability to remember stuff because I know that I can immediately look it up. And the idea is something to the, and so maybe you don't, and so your input system is your eyes.
Mhm.
And so one idea is that there's a limited amount of data that you can actually bring in through a visual input system.
Right.
So what would the secondary part to that be? Well, it'd be a direct communication. And so can you bring in more data quickly and have access to it through some sort of external cerebral?
Well, let me. I know that Dr. Orr is a fellow Thomist, so let me put it in Thomistic terms. Mm-hmm. What you seem to be suggesting, Tripp, is that the Thomas made a distinction between the active intellect and the potential intellect.
Yeah.
So the potential intellect, what you're saying is that all of that information on Google, if Google is really able to connect to the brain in such a way that I have immediate access to that, all that remains in my knowledge in potency, but not actually until I, quote unquote, access it.
Yes. So let me sort of give an analogy here. Every computer has three types of memories. It has very fast memory, which is made of silicon technology. And then it has intermediate memory speed, which is made of RAM. And then it has slow memory, which is made of hard disk, magnetic disk. So the very high speed memory can easily put information into the processor, so that say 2 plus 2 and then equals 4 can be in very fast memory. The two and 3 can be in fast memory. Then the addition operation is also in fast memory, and you add it and get 5. But when you have lots and lots of information, you put it in the intermediate memory, in the RAM, and so you then pull that memory slower and then process it. And then similarly, if you have a lot of information, you put it in the hard disk, and it is normally secondary storage, then you can process it much slower. Now the brain sort of similarly works that way. There is fast and quick memory, and that memory seems to be short because you remember things and then you forget them. And then there is intermediate memory where you remember things about a week ago, and then long-term memory, remember things 5-10 years ago, and you cannot remember certain details unless it is refreshed. And then you say, oh yes, I recall now that man shot that gun at 5 a.m. I remember. Sure. Yes. Yeah. So I think that is the way it will be, that Google memory will be probably stored in that kind of third storage, and then it will, if there is need, then it is brought to intermediate memory, and then if there is a need, it is brought to fast memory.
Interesting.
Yes.
Humans even have a different, and I don't guess the correct term is memory, since you never did it, but we inherit certain actions and abilities that we never even accomplished. We inherit them from our parents or whatever. So we even have inherited memory.
Yes.
So to a certain extent, but it's probably not. I mean, memory is probably not the right word. Inherited.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is in our DNA.
Archetypal structure that we're able to draw on and affects how our actions are in the future.
Yes. Interesting. Yes. So that is where quantum computing is going, and it will be able to solve a number of problems because quantum computers are inherently parallel, and they're extremely fast, and they have very large memories. They'll be able to handle complex DNA sequences and metagenomics. So because of this, we shall be able to find new cures for diseases much faster. And we shall also be able to do advanced cryptographic algorithms. So modern systems are all built using some kind of cryptography, some kind of mathematical cryptography. But quantum computers are going to break all these mathematical algorithms. So we have to find new algorithms which will be difficult for quantum computers to break. So a lot of research is going on into developing interdependent mathematics, so that the dependency makes the quantum computer difficult, makes it difficult for the quantum computer to solve the problem. We are also going to have weather and climate modeling. that is going to use quantum computers. So we should be able to make rain, probably make wind, change the direction of wind speeds, and affect the weather and the climate as a result of that. We are also going to have autonomous machines and vehicles. So thousands of vehicles driving on the Earth, and all being run using quantum computers, as well as thousands of drones and other autonomous vehicles in space, also be using quantum computers. We shall also do space travel and do space science much more effectively using quantum computers. And perhaps we should be able to detect even extraterrestrial life. It is believed that there is extraterrestrial life out there. It is a question of finding it out. And right now, NASA has a series of signals it has received, but it cannot interpret these signals. Are these just mere space radiations and vibrations, or these are some aliens communicating to us? I think in the future, using quantum computers, we shall be able to synthesize and be able to translate these signals into actual meaning.
These are the interpretations of the development of this technology that you're getting from all the research you're doing. That the inferences is that we will at least be able to answer the question as to whether there's life in other planets, other solar systems.
Exactly.
Perhaps even other galaxies.
Yes, perhaps even other galaxies. And if they are communicating with us, we shall be able to use the quantum computer to synthesize and to build that body of transmission and then interpret it as a language and be able to make up the language. For instance, archaeologists have been able to translate past dead languages by correlating, words and symbols and saying this means this, this means that. I think we can also use some advanced algorithm to determine if all the signals we are hearing and receiving is just background noise, or is it some kind of communication from extraterrestrial beings. Yes. So as a result of that, the area of artificial intelligence is also growing significantly. Machines are now doing 6 out of the 7 intellectual concepts.
Before we move on, can I ask you one question?
Yes, please.
So, do you know who Dr. Roger Penrose is?
Yes, I've heard of Dr. Roger Penrose.
Did a lot of work with Stephen Hawking on, for example, they both invented they discovered black holes.
Right,
yes.
Hawking radiation. I think he worked on them but I'm not.
Yes.
They were able to.
They were both at Oxford at the same time.
To the audience, I highly recommend the book "The Nature of Space and Time" by Penrose and Hawking.
Exactly. Yes, they both because black holes were first predicted by Albert Einstein, and they were confirmed by Stephen Hawking, and then Dr. Penrose did extensive work, which led he believed that we could see black holes, and which led actually to the most recent discovery and making of black spots, black holes.
We empirically confirmed them in, I think, 96 with the Hubble telescope.
Exactly.
So one of his theories, which it's just a little bit bizarre, is that there are microtubules but inside of neurons, and one of his ideas is that there's a weird quantum action with these microtubules, which helps explain consciousness because it increases the computational capacity of neurons. Are you familiar with that? Is there any comments you can make on it?
I have read something to that effect, and basically talking about first of all the fundamental laws of physics, the four types of forces. Talking about first of all, when we talk about the grand universe, we talk about gravity. And then we talk about the very tiny universe, we talk about the quantum theory. But there are in all ways, there are 4 forces operating at all times. Gravity, strong, weak electromagnetic forces, and electromagnetism. So those are the 4 fundamental forces. And he talks about, I think, in the area of weak electromagnetic forces and strong electromagnetic forces, being able, some kind of communication being able to take place. And so a neuron may have certain bondings which have certain nuclear forces, and those nuclear forces, right now they believe that microgravity also travels quite a distance, and that it could be able to send some signaling, some type of signaling, and therefore create some kind of interactions which makes certain types of intelligence.
The way I understand it is there's some sort of vibration of these neurotubules,
Yes.
and that his idea is that maybe it explains some ideas of the larger communication of brains, whether it be communal thought, or that the ideas of quantum, like the superposition,
Yes.
or some of the things that you talked
entanglement.
about in the
Yes.
very beginning,
Yeah.
that those interactions, because of these microtubules, would allow us. I thought it's a neat thing. I don't agree with it, but it's a neat idea.
Yes, yes. It is very interesting. And certain mathematicians claim that the thread that connects all these things is microgravity. That between two quanta, between two photons, there is microgravity, because gravity bends even light, and so it affects photons. So if gravity affects photons, then it is a very strong force, and therefore the photons can communicate with each other as a result of that. Yes. So that is very possible. It is very possible. I think more research is going to find out more information about this. Certainly. Yes. So there are 7 levels of cognitive levels, and these are based on Bloom's taxonomy.
Yeah.
But at the lowest level, at the highest level, depending on which direction you go, at the lowest level is cognition. So cognition is just the ability to observe and to understand something, to say this is a cat, this is a dog, this is a tree, this is a monkey, so that you cognize each of those things. Now the next level is contradiction, where you can say this is not a dog, this is not a cat, and then the third level is deduction, being able to take two facts and generate a third fact. And the fourth level is induction, where you look at patterns and then make conclusions. The fifth level is recursion, where you the effect of the effect of the effect. A car hits a pole, the pole falls down, hits a man's head, the man starts bleeding, and they rush him to hospital, and then the doctor treats that, and then they say, what caused it? Well, he was hit by a pole. What caused the pole to hit? The car hit it, and so on. So that kind of cause and effect recursively. And then the next level is, of course, inference, where you use statistical analysis to be able to make predictions. And then the final stage is abstraction. And so computers have been able to do all 6. The one that is kind of challenging is abstraction. So they are building abstraction now. So for instance, the ability to compose music, or the ability to like Michelangelo, to create a sculpture, a magnificent sculpture, something like that. But computers, I think, once computers are able to do abstraction, they should be able to think like human beings.
I don't agree.
Yes.
So I think the issue is, and this is there's something called informational integration theory, and Dr. Koch, Koch, I think, and he's Northeast, but he worked with Dr. Who discovered DNA? Watson Crick. He worked with Dr. Crick until he passed away. So Dr. Crick was an anatomist, or obviously was a biologist, and he changed his focus after they discovered DNA to neuroanatomy, and really looking at cognition. And they so for cognition to work, it has to flow both ways. And the problem with all of the direction, everything that you just spoke of, it's all unidirectional. So if information is only coming one way, then there is no phi, which is the computational component, which would say how much cognition is within or recognition is within the system. It's a very interesting theory, and to me it makes perfect sense. Like you've got to be able to make both inference as well as reference within the system back to previous states and forward states, but you can't just move one way through the system to have any understanding, but it's not understanding, any experience.
Yes.
So the very base of that would just be simple experience, and whether it's a very small, a limited creature, as long as, or a smaller creature, as long as it has both that two-way, could have experience all the way up to the experience of what humans have.
Yes.
Trip, why is it Crick? He spent the rest of his life studying neurobiology.
He completely changed. Not only that, he moved from the West Coast to the East Coast.
Was his reason behind that? I've heard a lot of naturalistic philosophers say that consciousness is really the last domain of the natural sciences. It's the one thing that the natural sciences can yet explain. Would that be a motive?
I don't know. I don't know enough about him to know what his motive is. I've read a lot of Conch's work. I read a couple of his books recently, trying to work on some of my own theories, and so it's. But why? Like, he worked on it till he died 7 or 8 years ago, and the day he died, he was dictating a paper about a special area in the brain called the colostrum, which has multiple connections to somatosensory motor, cognitive, cerebral, and visual and auditory. So it connects all the parts which you would have integrated analysis both ways of those systems. And it's a very I never even learned about it in neuroanatomy. I mean, in neuroanatomy. So and it's
a very niche field, as we say.
But there's another very interesting thing. You would think that particular component would be protected. It's in a very centralized area of the brain, and it also has dual blood supply. And the interesting part about we generally give things dual blood supply that are very important. So, like, you don't want to, like if it's just your toe,
it's almost like having redundancy.
Yes, you have to have redundancy because of the importance of the system. And whenever you find that, it's generally an important system, something that.
Yes.
So that's another interesting part about this one particular organ.
Yes.
Neurological feature.
Yes. Now, in the field of genetics, I know that there is DNA sequencing, and you want to sequence. Say you have a DNA sequence, and you say, "Oh, this DNA sequence here explains this disease," right? Or, but why are there so many these DNA sequences which lead to nowhere or to nothing? Billions of them, and then one leads to a pattern. For instance, somebody having blonde hair, is a very specific DNA sequence. Or somebody having black hair, blonde hair. But what about the other DNA sequences? Why don't they make all types of hair? They just don't make hair at all,
Right.
So that is mind-boggling. It is mind-boggling why specific sequences make certain patterns and are able to explain certain things. But certainly we are going to be able to find these DNA sequences much faster with quantum computing. But you are right.
Part of the issue there, and part of the thing that quantum computing is going to solve is protein folding. Because the three-dimensional structure of proteins is one of their most important components.
Exactly.
Which is hard to comprehend. But if hemoglobin is not folded appropriately, then you don't transport oxygen appropriately.
Exactly.
So if you have, so a great example of that is sickle cell disease. And so sickle cell disease is a is a disease of protein folding.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and it's a one base pair difference.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's correct.
Mm-hmm.
Usually,
Mm-hmm.
and so, or it can be one base pair difference. And so, you can have, and then there are different components of that, and that one difference confers resistance to malaria.
Yes.
And so, if you're in an area where malaria is endemic,
Mm-hmm.
and you're recessive,
Yes.
you don't generally have the problems with the disease of sickle cell disease, but you get a genetic resistance. Whereas if you become homozygous, then you do have, so it conferred this survival advantage, unless
Yes.
you have both copies.
Exactly.
But it's protein folding,
Yes.
and that's part of that's one of the issues that quantum computing, or this computational increase, is going to help us solve.
Exactly.
Is how these proteins fold and interact with one
Yes.
another.
Exactly.
Because you can't. I mean, it's mind-boggling just to think about.
Yeah.
Just to think about it. Yes. And looking for that particular folding, looking for that particular DNA sequence. I mean, you can search billions and billions of sequences, and then you find that one. And then something else. I mean, they say that Alzheimer's disease is genetic in a sense, so they want to find the sequence so that they can cure the disease. It takes looking at billions of possible combinations. And similarly with drugs as well. Drug interactions can be, and I know that you're a PhD in pharmacy, you know this better. Drugs can also depend on very specific chemical combinations and compounds, and also acting under certain conditions, certain temperatures, certain pressures, and so on and so on. And how do you find this exact combination that solves this particular problem, or that acts on a certain disease? It all depends on the biochemistry and the biochemical reactions, and there are millions of possibilities. So once again, quantum computing will help in those areas as well. So what is interesting is that quantum computers will require intelligence, and artificial intelligence is what is going to do it. Specifically, the area of neural networks. Because we are going to mimic the brain, and we have already started mimicking the brain, and we have what we call recurrent neural networks, convolutional neural networks. So we have deep neural networks, and we have those kind of networks in which we simulate the brain, and we simulate some solutions to problems. And so we are going to put this in a quantum computer, and it will do it very fast. It will do deep neural networks very fast and find solutions to different problems. So we have, for instance, artificial vision, the ability to see something and interpret it and know that it is dangerous, or I should avoid it, or you should take action. Same thing, how do we make a robot do that? So that is all going to be part of quantum computing. Robotic and autonomous navigation, whether it is in space or right here on Earth, is going to be a big part of quantum computing and artificial intelligence. Self-learning and skills acquisition systems. So we think that we can augment the brain a number of ways. We know that the mind consists of the intellect, the memory, the will, and the imagination, 4 components. And the least understood is the imagination, because the memory we understand much better, because at least we know how to compute memory, and we know how to preserve memory of information. The will, we know, is the decision maker, and we know how decisions are made to a large extent, but not all decisions are made with perfect knowledge. So what makes, where there is no perfect knowledge, then we apply statistics. What is the best effort? What is the most likely thing? What is the best chance? But then we go into heuristics as well. For instance, a neurosurgeon or a general surgeon can cut a patient and decide to do the surgery in a specific way and leave certain things there and take out certain things. and all his knowledge is based on intuition. He might not be able to tell you exactly why he did that, but he finds that the patient gets better. So how do you make a computer make those decisions? For instance, if a neurosurgeon or just any surgeon carried out a kidney surgery, can a robot do the same? You know, can it learn over thousands of surgeries? Can it learn to carry out surgeries? Those are questions that we ask ourselves. But certainly it will help with skills acquisition and self-learning. And then also it will perform a variety of human tasks and jobs, that is for sure. And it will be it will also do factory automation and repair. So machines will be able to repair themselves. They will know when it is overheating, when they need oil, when they need to change certain components and certain parts. So all that is going to be part of the quantum revolution. Now, obviously, we know that new jobs and professions are going to be created. Repetitive and manual tasks will go away, and creative jobs will become important, and energy efficiency is going to increase. The cure for diabetes, the cure for a number of diseases will take place, and there will be new ways of doing business as well. And I want to get into blockchain because we are talking about new ways of doing business. So we need new memory models because things are becoming more and more complex, and we need more security, and we need more accountability. We need to be able to image every action that we take so that we can reproduce the action and find out who did what and when they did it. So because of this, we have talked about linkages. We need to link every activity to an action. We need for the action to be immutable. In other words, if you take an action, if you want to take a different action, you must create a new record and then a new record so that we can always track through chains. That is why we call them blockchains. And because of that, we need for the system to be distributed. So we talk about distributed ledger technology, so that it is widely distributed and they can communicate with each other. And they should be systems which are high trust and high security, so that we can always track and know who did what and when they did it. And
so are cryptocurrencies, are those blockchains?
Yes, cryptocurrencies are blockchains.
They are blockchains.
Yes, they are blockchains, yes. So we need permissioned access so that we can always track who did what and when. We need to be able to track what they do and when they do it and whether it is allowable. So there has to be some kind of consensus algorithm which will allow 2 or 3 people must agree, or 5 people or 7 people, or whatever number is agreed upon must agree to an action before it is taken. And then we also want to have digital inclusion. Right now, 3/4 of the world is unbanked, and obviously we need to bank these people. We need to create a banking system for them, and it looks like the only way to do this may be through a blockchain.
Why?
3/4 of the world is unbanked.
Yes.
Why do we need to do this?
To solve the problem of hunger, the problem of poverty, the problem of disease.
And there's no other way to do that.
There's no other way to do it. The best way to do it so far has been through blockchain, the introduction of blockchain. And the idea is to introduce the blockchain into the cell phone and have everybody have a smart device.
Well, I'll be quite honest with you. I don't like the world you're describing.
I understand, yes. But unfortunately, it is moving there.
What don't you like about that world? I mean, so maybe explain what your
right. I'm not denying that we're moving there. I'm skeptical about whether artificial intelligence will be achieved. On the day that it's achieved, I will have to relent and say it's been achieved, right?
Yes.
I have to bow to facts.
Yes.
But until it is achieved, I will be skeptical. But what I don't like about this is I feel an intense loss of freedom in the world that is going to be created. Because take just the idea that certain interactions, banking interactions, must be approved. Who's going to be the approver? Who tells me what kinds of resources I can and can't get? And I can totally envision a situation in which, if you do not subscribe to the narrative of the culture, whatever that narrative is and whatever that culture is, then you will be blocked from being able to achieve food, fulfillment, or whatever you think. So I don't see a whole lot of freedom in this. I see a lot of just further imposition of a narrative that people will have to subscribe to be able to buy into the system, or they will be outside and persecuted because they do not want to buy into this computer system.
But as an alternate idea, I mean, right now the only way to move, not the only way, but the only free way to move money in and out of Venezuela is through blockchain and through cryptocurrency. And so it has allowed a lot of, and I don't know what a lot is, but it's allowed people there to have access to currency other than the crazy governments that they have. And I think in a certain way that is freedom. And so could this be spreading that to other countries, China, etc., and work as a counter idea, counter to what their philosophies are? Because the philosophy here is as free as from what I understand with cryptocurrency, the philosophy is as free as you can get. And so will governments, I guess the question is, will governments try to suppress that? The answer, of course, is yes. But can we create an environment in which that is much more difficult to do?
So I believe the initial phase of that will be an incredible amount of freedom and good.
Yeah.
I think that people will experience also, and they will love it and buy into the system. And the question will be, why not? I think that once everybody's into the system, it's kind of like Facebook. Everybody's in Facebook, or a lot of people are logged into this system. But now there are certain controls being pushed on people. There are, if you post something on Facebook, well, they'll shut your site down, or they'll remove what you've posted because they don't like it. So what you could post 10 years ago, you can no longer post.
Yes.
And I think that the same thing will happen here. Everyone will buy into the system because it is so free, and then once the billions of people are tapped into the system, then the controls will set in, because corporations will begin to act like governments. You're talking to somebody who just doesn't trust people.
Yes. So here is the proposition. Okay. Supposing the U.S. government is looking at creating the digital dollar.
Okay.
And what should the digital dollar be capable of doing? First of all, it will be a cryptocurrency.
Yes.
But it will be a stable coin, meaning that it will not suffer from the volatility that Bitcoin suffers from. Bitcoin goes so low and then it shoots up so high. It goes so low, it shoots up so high. And as a result, you make many losses and you make big gains. But when they make the digital dollar, they want to create an equilibrium so that the inflation, and deflation is small. So the dollar fluctuates in a small way, so it is a stable currency. That is number one. Number two, if you have 1,000 digital dollars, you should be able to, the digital dollar by itself should explore the stock market and see that, the price of Apple is going up. So it buys Apple stock. So today you are worth $1,000. Tomorrow you'll be $1,500. And the next day you could be
3,000
and so on. So it should be able, using smart contracts and artificial intelligence, to invest by itself and gain money. So this is part of it. And then you can also state that after so much money, I want to buy real estate, I want to buy a farm, I want to buy hotels, and then it should be able to buy hotels for you and a farm for you and run all this.
I have no doubt that the utopian vision
Yes.
is a possibility. I mean, I think that with the technology we currently have, forget cryptocurrency.
Yes.
I think that the technology we had in the 1980s could have solved much of world hunger. But governments constantly get in the way. And I think that the technology we're moving into now, it has the potential to do so much good for humankind.
Yes.
But I think that humans will get in the way.
Yes.
They will not, because I mean, in 1913, when we created the Federal Reserve, we were given the same story.
Yes.
With the Federal Reserve, there will be no more recessions.
Yes.
And thank God that there were no recessions after 1913. I mean, thank goodness that no depressions happened. Nothing happened. It's just over and over and over again, we're told that this new thing is going to solve these problems.
Yes.
And while a select few truly benefit from these solutions,
Yes.
so many people are oppressed and discarded because of the new order.
Yes.
And I think that there's a utilitarian ethic driving this.
Yes.
The ends determine or justify the means. We're going to save millions at the expense of billions, is really what I'm looking at in this
but it's
dystopic future.
not really a government driving this.
It doesn't matter. I think that in a way, I think it's worse that it's not a government driving this. In a way, I think it's worse because there's no real genuine accountability to the people. Elon Musk can launch a rocket into space today. Great. We applaud him. Tomorrow, we have a guy who's pretty much become a kind of dictator.
Yes. See, what is interesting is that at the beginning of time, man was, quote unquote, completely free. He could hunt his own food. He could move around freely. There was no boundary, no border, no country. Eventually, man came into a social organization.
Yes.
And they began to form communities.
Yes.
And they began to form community roles. And then all of a sudden, they amalgamated those communities, and those communities became nation states.
Yes.
And then they became countries. And then, of course, because they had different ideas about the way to run the future, they started fighting amongst themselves. And they fought amongst themselves until they said, let's form a League of Nations. And they formed the League of Nations after the First World War, and they said, no more war again, ever.
And they promised us there would never be another one.
Yes.
Thank God that after World War I, we never saw any more war.
No, we went and found the Second World War.
Well, just like we never saw any recessions after the founding of the Federal Reserve.
Yes.
I mean, I'm so thankful for these ingenious solutions.
So I think that it is going to reduce the problem, because what I see is that, like human health has improved over the centuries. But particularly in the 20th century, there has been tremendous leap. We have wiped out certain diseases, like smallpox and so on. And I think that it's going to result in, all these technology is going to result in the cure of a number of diseases, and people are going to live longer, and people are going to be healthier. But unfortunately, people are still going to die. And unfortunately, the poor will always be with us, but we shall reduce the number of poor people.
So I have a question for
Yes.
y'all. What is y'all's philosophy on what money really is? And I mean it in the deepest sense of that.
Besides the bare definition of a medium of exchange,
Yes.
it is whatever the federal, its worth is whatever the Federal Reserve says it's worth.
No, I mean just money in general.
So-
You're talking about money in the
Yes.
sense of in the United States.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm talking about any kind of money, whether it be
Well,
cryptocurrency or whether it be...
the definition is it's a medium of exchange.
So there are three different definitions. One is a medium of exchange, where you may want sugar, I may want potatoes, so we can exchange. Then it is a store of value, because I can keep money.
Yes.
And then it is also a unit of investment, because I can invest the money to grow. So those are the three basic definitions.
And
of
the
money.
evolution
So I think
was
it's
completed by 1776 with Adam Smith.
Yes.
Market capitalism taught us that you can actually grow wealth through investment.
Exactly. Yes.
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 so
The wealth of nations.
from my standpoint,
Mhm.
it's and I think of it on two different ways. One, I think it is a medium of sacrifice. It is how much are you willing to do, or how much have you done that you will then return in the future that somebody else's sacrifice. And so we're trading a certain amount of sacrifice of whatever that be, whether it be time, effort, talent, treasure,
Skill.
et cetera,
Mhm.
et cetera.
Mhm.
And it's also a way to move or to push labor. So
Yes.
it's a way to assign labor appropriately.
Yes.
So we need X amount of work done, and so there's a certain amount of what I think is sacrifice or
Yes.
value to that work,
Yes.
and then you will receive that
Some
benefit
Yes. Mhm.
that you can then use when you're not working or when you're not,
Exactly.
So it's that to be purchased in the future. And to me, when you look at things, it puts a whole new light on what it means to either attain any amount of money, to hold it. It puts it makes it it puts sort of a Christian value on it, in the fact that it's more related to the work you do, the work you either done or haven't done. It also makes it kind of dirty to get it in a way in which it makes it even more dirty to get it in a dishonest way.
Yes. Yes.
Because it reflects my sacrifice, but if I've got it in a dishonest way, it represents the sacrifice that somebody else made.
So it is theft. Yes.
It's
it is theft,
it's
yes.
theft of
Yes.
it's theft of time, it's
Yes.
theft of treasure, it's
Yes.
theft of all of
value,
those
of
of value
value,
of those
yes.
values.
Yes.
And so
Mhm.
I don't like the idea that it's just a medium of exchange, because I think it's so much more than that.
Yes, yes. It is definitely a store of value, because you're talking about value. Like if I work in a farm and somebody comes and harvests all my potatoes, which I took 6 months to grow, then that is theft, and they have stolen value from me. They can go and sell those potatoes and make some money out of it.
But with the invention of money, I can now possess the value of my potatoes without actually having the potatoes.
Yes. But now, of course, money has evolved.
But you're possessing somebody else's 6 months of sacrifice to grow those potatoes.
Well, the potential,
so-
at least, is that the potato grower himself, who may have had the potatoes stolen through the monetary system, can actually keep his wealth even if he loses his actual stock whereby he got the wealth. Is that not the advantage of having a monetary system in the first place over and against just the raw material good of the potatoes?
That is the advantage. But I mean, if somebody, now if you sell the potatoes and bank the money, and somebody steals the money from the bank, then they have stolen away. All
Yeah,
your
now they've
efforts.
taken my wealth away.
Yes, they've taken your.
I have secured my wealth. It's more secure than the wealth in the potatoes themselves.
Yes. Mhm.
However, I'm still at risk. What we're really talking about is the tension between freedom and security.
Yes. Mhm.
Governments are produced to provide us with a sense of security, because
Yes.
when we were at the beginning of time more free than ever,
Yes.
we were less secure than ever.
Yes. Mhm.
So we've given up through the social contract
Yes.
a little bit of our freedom
In order to gain some security.
to gain some security. And I think that the difference, even between left and right in politics, the difference is not that one wants freedom and one wants security. Is the question is, which is prior? Which is your priority? Does freedom come first and security is there to promote that freedom? Or does security come first and freedom is subservient to it?
And the question too that I would like to is a fundamental difference in philosophy. The capitalist philosophy, at least from Adam Smith, says that a human being is naturally selfish
Yes.
and will act in selfish interest. So if if, for instance, I see that people need food, I can grow food and sell them food because I'm going to make a lot of money. So I grow food. So by taking advantage of the selfish nature of the human being, actually all goods are produced in society, and eventually society is fulfilled. Every need is fulfilled in society. This is the capitalist approach to society, and it has worked very extremely well. Now, the communist approach is that the few people who organize labor, who organize capital, labor, land, and means of production, control this means of production, and then they exploit a large mass of people. And because they exploit a large mass of people, the surplus value gained from this mass of people is taken by the capitalist. So what the communist says is you should overthrow the capitalist and create a classless society.
So there's only one place where the means of production is
controlled.
Resided.
Yes, yes. The means of production is then controlled by the government, and the government then determines how much production is to be done. But unfortunately, this doesn't work in real life, as we have seen it fail in China, and it failed in Russia.
Can you think of any socialist country whereby a Marxist economy has ever worked?
No, there's no country at all. Even China had to become capitalist.
Yes.
Yes. It is practicing state capitalism. And it is going to be capitalist anyways. It is just a matter of time, because people have tasted wealth, they have tasted the power of money, they want private property, and they're going to get it. It's a matter of time.
Which is at least a vindication to some degree of Smith's thesis that humans are motivated by selfish interest.
Yes, yes. So, so the question then, now the idea that blockchain advocates is that, yes, people have self-interest, but what they do, unfortunately, the way the financial system has grown, it has excluded billions of people as a result of this. So what they want to do is to integrate these people into the financial system, into the stock market, into the futures market, into the bonds market, into the options market. And the way to do that is to introduce them to the system by probably having maybe a cell phone, and then building some software where you can trust the person, and their work or value can be integrated into the system, and then they can begin to invest in the system and therefore benefit. But also, in addition to this, we are thinking of medical blockchains. So how will a medical blockchain work? A medical blockchain will have a device like this, and it can measure all your basic health parameters. For instance, your temperature, your pressure, your blood sugar, and other common your heart rate, and so on. And so it should be able to tell you need to see a doctor because you're having a fever, and then you go see a doctor, or your blood sugar is getting high. It looks like you're getting diabetes, or your heart, there's something wrong with your heart. You need a cardiologist, and so on. So we think that blockchains are going to help in those areas.
I please understand. I'm agreeing with you that this is where society is heading.
Yes.
And so it's kind of like it or not, deal with it.
Yes.
So I think that, this conversation has to be had. I don't think we're the only ones having it.
Yes.
Everybody and people that are tuning in, the 2 or 5 or hopefully 50 or 50,000 people that are listening to this conversation eventually need to do some reading on the whole issue, everything from cryptocurrency to transhumanism.
Yes.
Because that is the discussion. That's where things are heading.
Yes.
But the other conversation that I think has to be had that is not being had by the Elon Musk of this world.
Yes.
Is whether we should go here, whether it ought to be.
Yes.
And so that leads to my question.
Yes.
My question to you is, do you think, well, I'll just put it in terms of a proposition, and I just wish you would comment on it. The proposition is that we can envision a future in which there will be various ranges of people that live in the modern world. All the way from those who are totally plugged into the system, whatever that may mean. Like, some people have even, I remember reading a Time magazine article in 2010 or 2011 where Time magazine spoke of transhumanism as a thing. This was probably the first time the modern consciousness, we all kind of became aware of this movement.
Yes.
And they had a picture of an individual with it kind of looked like a battery sort of plugged into their brain, where they're literally downloading Google content at will.
Yes.
That's what you were speaking of earlier in your paper.
Yes.
That's an extreme version of what we're talking about, all the way to say a group of people that want to move away, live on a mountain, and have very limited access to this technology. Maybe a cell phone, but not much more than that. Kind of living like we live now.
Yes.
So do you see that as being the future, like that range of human beings, all the way from the fully plugged in transhumanists to the what we would now call hillbillies, but it'd be a 22nd century version of a hillbilly who they're not plugged in, but they are plugged in only in the sense that they have their own individual cell phone and so forth. Do you see this?
Yes, I see that. There are always people who are going to, based on philosophies of life, there are some people who believe that technology is evil.
Like the Amish.
Yes. And they will create their own societies and continue to try to live unconnected from technology and unconnected with the rest of the world. But every so often they will require a need. For instance, the Amish people, a child gets a certain disease and needs some surgery.
And they're running to the hospital.
Then they run to the hospital, and the kid is plugged into all the technology, and they do the surgery and so on. And while they pray as well, yes, prayer is good, and I'm a believer in God. At the same time, it is God who is advancing human civilization through angelic knowledge, through our research. And so I think we can improve always. Now, there are always going to be bad actors. And I haven't even begun to talk about the hackers of the world.
Tripp and I did what we call a sabotage of your paper. Because, I mean, by the way, and it's so interesting, and I want to see this on our blog at some point whenever we launch it. So I'm just doing a plug for our blog. But go ahead.
Yes. So I think that we are always going to have bad actors. People who are going to, for the autonomous vehicles, which are self-driving cars, there are people who will organize and crash the system, and break the system or hijack systems and then ask for payments. Unless you make a payment, they will not release the system.
Right. So well, you're giving, and I hate to keep interrupting, but you're giving the bad version of what I'm talking about. The bad version being the hijackers, the people that are messing with the system.
Yes.
But I'm also saying that there will be a group of people in the future that will never want. I know people right now, to stop myself mid-sentence, I know people right now that don't want their checking account given to their job so that they get the automatic withdrawal into their checking account. Yes. An automatic deposit from their place of business where they work. They just want that. They want the paper check so they can go to the bank and actually make the deposit.
Exactly.
There'll be a future version of the people that they don't want the automatic driving vehicle. They want their 68 Mustang that's been recouped over and over again. And so in 2050, you'll still see people driving their own car, even though the majority are doing the automated. So you're agreeing with all of what I'm saying.
I agree with you. Yes, entirely. Yes. So the question is, to what extent is this technology going to be controlled by individuals? Because we have seen Facebook become extremely large. We have seen Google become extremely large. We see Elon Musk growing big, Amazon growing big. What is to prevent somebody else, for instance, building robots and becoming a worldwide company, building all types of robots, maybe agricultural robots that do farming, or robots that do surgery, or robots that do other tasks. And so this person then controls, because once you are the leader in a certain technology, you control it, just like Facebook controls, in a certain sense, controls opinions out there. That's why people are talking about Facebook being bad for kids, Facebook being bad for for politics, because they can influence opinion. Same thing with Google and YouTube and so on. So that is a question that has to be asked. What is AI going to look like? Who is going to control the AI?
And should it happen?
Yes, it's definitely going to happen.
Yeah, but I know that. Ought it to? We can't confuse the is with the ought. And
unfortunately,
and I don't think that people are asking that question. Ought. I mean, Bill Burr, the comedian, raised some really good questions here in his last, when he did a stand-up show at the Royal Albert Hall in London, and he said, I'm seeing these shows like on, I think it was on 60 Minutes, where someone was interviewing a robot who had desires and feelings, and Bill Burr's like, haven't you seen Terminator? Haven't you seen 90% of the dystopic movies about the future?
Yes.
And despite all of it's almost like despite all of those warnings, it's almost like God through these movies is telling us, watch out.
Yeah.
And we're just not even, we're saying there's no doubt in our minds that we can continue to control this, so we shouldn't worry about it.
I would make the argument that none of those movies actually have a conscious computer at its base. And that's a different discussion. I have a question.
Yes.
Is there such thing as crypto debt? In other words, the idea,
That's
and I mean it because
fantastic
because I have this scary idea that the cryptocurrency, like almost the authoritarian version of what you're talking about, is that there could be a crypto credit card in which everybody agrees that I suddenly owe Travis $100,000, and nobody wants to do business with me at all. Because one of the issues with crypto, the idea is that you know exactly the value, I know the value, he knows it, and it's constantly updated. So there's no way really to get rid of the idea that you have debt. And so a crypto debt would actually follow you forever.
And
even into the grave. It might even
Yes.
attach to your kids.
Yes.
So
privacy.
Yes.
Privacy is
like, that would be
removed in the modern.
Yes.
That would be horrible. I
Yes.
think.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, I could totally see
Yes.
kids grabbing hold of that like
Yes.
crypto credit card.
Yes.
No,
They can
absolutely.
spend crypto dollars,
Yes.
but at the same time,
They're
that
putting their
cryp-
parents in debt.
Yeah,
for
that
the
crypto debt is
Yeah.
suddenly held
Yes.
and can't.
And even at the age of 50,
As a
I
matter
can't
of
get a
fact,
mortgage for a home
can't
because
be removed.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. How could
And all
he?
the information is public. So
How about a
Yeah.
crazy
Yes.
world in which that's going on?
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's outside of our normal monetary
Yes.
system too.
Yes.
So there's no bankruptcy.
Yes.
No, that's why this scares the ever living hell out of me. I understand that there's a path we can take as the human race
Yes.
where this kind of thing can become a utopia.
Yes.
That's what we needed to invent is the crypto
Yes.
credit card. I think I just came
I
up
think
with
the crypto credit card would have to have a limit. Yes.
But that's
By
the other thing.
consensus.
The crypto credit card is either going to be the worst thing imaginable because there is no limit and everybody knows your credit score, or there's a maximum wage in effect via the crypto credit card. And because there's no privacy in this discussion, Lenin said there's no such thing as a private morality.
Yes.
And for the Marxists, everything boils down to economics and class.
Yes.
And that is the dystopia that I see. I'm not judging where you see things, but at least the way you laid it out,
Yes.
you were giving us the potential of so much good that can
Yes.
come. And God forbid that I ever sit by and let a girl die of leukemia if I know I have the means of a cure.
Yes. I think that.
But I see
Yes.
so much
Yes.
bad things.
I think that
in this.
the issue here is going to the good guys versus the bad guys. I know that you could get into crypto debt, and cryptocurrency, I mean credit cryptocurrency, you could get into crypto debt and you could find yourself in a real hole. But you should be able to stop before you get there. So this is where the smart people have to work for good, you know. And we are relying on this, that there are going to be a bunch of good people who are going to work in this area. And overwhelming, the good people will be better than the bad people as a result of that. Yes.
We do live in a world where I experience it every day because I work with teenagers, and there's no group of people that wants to shirk their responsibility than a teenager. And we live in a world where more and more people don't want to take responsibility for their behavior. And so I'm trying to envision a group of my students plugged into this system.
Yes.
Where they can download anything they want at will, or they can spend any amount of money they want at will.
Yes.
And I can see the average teenager becoming $100,000 in debt in a matter of weeks.
Yes.
And I think I think I was being very gracious, extremely gracious too. And then forget that. Think of the 40-year-old who just gets that high off of a purchase.
Yes. I think that some of these decisions, because as we get more and more into blockchain, AI, quantum computing, machine learning, I think we have to create a new morality. Just like Western civilization is based on Judeo-Christian civilization, and there has been a morality. There has been a morality in the law. There has been a morality in the way business is conducted. There has been a morality in the social contract. There has been a morality in the way people behave. You don't do this, you do this, and so on and so on. I think there is a need, there is a serious debate that is necessary to get in. Once we automate these things, how can we embed moral decisions into them? If we don't embed moral decisions, it's going to be a nightmare.
That is the absolute key.
Yes.
And that's
why, and that makes me even more afraid. But go ahead.
That is that. No, you said it. That is the absolute key. Is moving forward with AI, crypto, whatever, is making sure that there's morality that's embedded within that. I think that's probably a good place to stop, because that's a conversation within itself. I mean, this idea of how does that happen? How do we judge that now? On a more basic level, where does that come from?
Yeah. Do you mind if I say just one thing?
Go ahead.
Well, yesterday was Reformation Day, and I am a Reformed Christian.
Yes.
And the writer Francis Schaeffer spoke of the Reformation as creating the forms and freedoms necessary to, on the one hand, give people these incredible freedoms that we have, and on the other hand, do it in such a way that we don't have chaos.
Yes.
And my fear with the technology is it's going to give us the security, but it's going to kill the freedom. Because you're either going to have a moral system in which people just can't budge, or you're going to have no moral system in which it becomes chaos and people are now in 2 hours $100,000 in debt.
Oh yeah. And then then they have no freedom because they're basically enslaved to whoever whoever owns that debt.
Yes.
And so you can definitely
and
make
we have not even
talked
about the implications in biology.
Yes.
In reproductive technology, for instance. I mean,
I think childbirth will be a thing of the past.
Yes. A time will come when somebody in some island is going to create human beings, massive numbers of human beings, and genetically engineer them to obey him.
Yes.
And he can create an army of people who can become very dangerous.
Cloning technology scares me even more than drone technology, because cloning technology... See, I'm a dystopian. I don't think that this is a good future we're looking at. Cloning technology is doubly bad because these are real human beings we're talking about who are now slaves and don't really have autonomy.
Yes.
Whereas the droning technology, I'm with Tripp. I don't think that AI is genuinely possible. I think we'll have ways of mapping it and mimicking it and that sort of thing. Again, if your predictions prove me wrong, so be it. I'll bow to the fact. But But until that day comes, I'm just skeptical. So I don't really care about the moral status of a drone, but I do care about the moral status
until drones have to make decision on striking somebody on their own.
Right, and I
agree with them. I am concerned about the moral use of a drone.
Right.
But the moral status of a drone, I'm
whether or not you turn it on, turn it off, does it?
But a clone,
yes,
is going to be a human being. The person will have 46 chromosomes. He will be me.
Yes.
And he will be an automaton, just like you said.
Yes.
Some guy on some island, Dr. Moreau, will invent him and then reduplicate him, and next thing you know, we'll have a clone war right here on Earth.
Yeah. So awesome conversation. Enjoyed everything you said. I want to, like, the idea, and this is certainly something that I'm super interested in right now. This whole idea of whether or not something other than a human being can have experience. And so look at Koch's work, look at Crick's work. Maybe we can have a conversation when Dr. Ajay comes back. So this is Comics, Philosophy, and Religion. Dr. Orr gave a wonderful presentation tonight. We've been doing this about once a month, and we'll try to do it again next month. If you're interested or have a topic that you'd like for us to talk about, please post it to the Facebook or comment on our YouTube page. And that's PretoriaFieldsRadio.com, as well as Pretoria Fields Radio on YouTube. And so that was awesome, and I appreciate it, guys.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very
We'll
much.
get the music back on. So this is Cruel Summer.
I think we should continue. I think we should continue this discussion next time.
Yes, yes.
But you know, the weather moving stuff.
Yes.
See, we're